Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So Boris Johnson, of course, has had his arse kicked all over the political landscape of the United Kingdom by Parliament in just his first week as Prime Minister, where at least Westminster was open for business. He's lost all 6 votes, a record you will think he will keep secure for as long as the UK even exists, which actually, when you think about it, may not be all that long. But, as I've said before, just because he's been defeated on this issue and we are likely to force him to ask for an extension, not quite the same thing as getting one, I admit, that doesn't mean to say he's powerless to cause mischief of any kind, and there are some very serious allegations pointing in his direction which I'd like to discuss. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So, Boris Johnson, as soon as he became Prime Minister, was already gearing up for a general election. This is what annoyed me so much about Labour's position, which is still not really taking shape. They needed to be there before Boris Johnson was named Prime Minister, because as soon as he went in, he was gearing up for it. Not because he necessarily wanted a general election, but because he knew that one would come anyway, and, well, forewarned is forearmed. He is known to have conducted a campaign to try and gather information from British voters. He's known to have misused public funds to get his party ready for the election. But there's emerging evidence via leaked documents that both he and Dominic Cummings have been ordering the Cabinet Office to gather targeted and personalised information. And what that means is that Dominic Cummings is preparing to pull the same tricks that Cambridge Analytica did for the Brexit referendum a few years ago and the US presidential election in the same year. Stealing personal information in order to profile people and dupe voters into supporting a position that is about as far from their own interests as you can get. The instruction has been described as top priority for all ministers and all departments, according to those leaked documents. And of course, I suppose the reason why these documents have been leaked is because civil servants are extremely alarmed at this. And as with anything that Whitehall knows is wrong, they will leak the information so others can find out about it. I suppose we shouldn't really be surprised. I mean, although people do still wonder if Dominic Cummings has anything up his sleeve for this new law, he doesn't. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have a plan for the longer game, like I said before. Just because this law will compel Boris Johnson to seek an extension, and even if we get that extension, doesn't mean that a no-deal Brexit has been defeated. It hasn't. It's Boris Johnson that's buggered, not necessarily his aim. The bottom line is that even with an extension, there is going to be a general election very soon after. This was because the parties opposed to the Conservatives could not agree on a much more simple position, which would have been to have deposed Boris Johnson straight away, issued another, sought the extension, issued another public vote, and then had a general election. Because Labour didn't want to do that, we're now in a situation where we're going to have this general election. One of 3 outcomes is going to occur. One, the hoped for one, is that we end up with a significant majority of MPs in parties implacably opposed to a no-deal Brexit and at the very least committed to a public vote, although the Lib Dems have shifted on that a little bit. I'll talk about that tomorrow. The second possible outcome is a right old mishmash, much as we have at the moment, with no emerging determination for any outcome. Doesn't mean to say an outcome won't occur, but it's not going to be clear what that outcome is going to be. Or 3, what Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson want, a majority of MPs in parties who will vote for a no-deal Brexit. Cummings is laser focused on this final outcome. He doesn't really care about Boris Johnson's career or aim to be Prime Minister. He just has this outcome in mind. Now, political social media adverts are still legal, even though they have no oversight. This was the issue with the Brexit referendum. The illegality was discovered later on after it's too late. Charges brought of sorts. The criminal charges are still being held up, of course. Someone was asking me about that. They were saying, so why haven't these criminal charges been brought? To which, with today's news, I would have to say we ought to ask the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, who has just been rewarded in the honours list, which was written by the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, who, of course, was blocking these investigations. Cambridge Analytica and their methods didn't go away. The company dissolved to make it difficult for law enforcement agents to further investigate them. It allowed them to shred their paperwork because the company was no longer in existence. Now, in ordinary times, there are people who can be a little bit nervous about governments collecting or using personal data. But, I realise that this is something that has to happen. Yes, I want safeguards in place. Of course I do. I don't want people being able to randomly look up personal information for their own selfish purposes. It all needs to be in the public interest. But with safeguards in place, absolutely, government does need to be able to collect and analyse data. But that's ordinary times, and there's plenty of people already not too sure about that. These are not ordinary times. The UK government is run by people who are known to have broken the law during at least one political campaign and now have much greater means for doing exactly the same again, breaking the same laws in the same way. They don't even have to pay for it this time because the British taxpayer will foot the bill on that as well. Labour's Tom Watson has noted with concern how is it that profiling British citizens helps with no deal preparations? What's the point in trying to say, well, we want to know what people want from a no deal Brexit? What they want is to know that there's going to be enough food and that they can afford that food, that there's going to be enough medicines and they'll have access to those medicines, that they want jobs. That's what people want. You don't need to profile people for that. What you profile people for is exactly what Cambridge Analytica profile people for. Find out the ones who are swing voters. Find those. Find their hot button issues. What is it that's going to swing that vote for them? And then just promise the earth, right? And that's the thing. In these leaked documents, Johnson has been saying that it would allow the personalised information to be analysed and fed back to support decision making. We know that there's no decision making can possibly come from that personalised information from no deal Brexit. Not when you're using it to profile. It can only be used to try and dupe people into voting a particular way, right? That links in with his Facebook ads when he became Prime Minister. That was there to test out British voters, find out their hot button issues so that he could promise something to get them on board. Hence, all those promises he's been making. The promise of extra funding for the NHS, which turned out to be money that they already had, not new money at all. Recruitment of 20,000 police, which turned out not, well, first of all, that's a net loss anyway, because the Conservatives have slashed police numbers by 21,000. So that's still a net loss. But even then, it turns out that actually doesn't mean 20,000 police. It means 20,000 new staff across law enforcement agencies, nowhere near that many actual police. The recent promise of more funding for schools, that will similarly disappear up in smoke as well. The bottom line is that a government that is promising massive tax cuts, as this one is, reduces public spending in order to pay for it. They don't increase it. That's not how it works. So it would seem clear to me and to others that Boris Johnson has set the whole of Whitehall, the whole civil service, into misusing data in order to win a general election. In other words, a party political issue. This, to me, surely has got to be another one on the charge sheet if we ever get rid of this government and start to launch proper investigations. Because what he's aiming to do is to abuse taxpayers' money, the civil service, to win him an election, to allow him to crash this country out of the EU without a deal. Even if he has to arrange an extension before that can come to fruition, because of course he's not going to get his general election until November at least. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.